The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Confederation stretched upward in sweeping crystal spires, designed to inspire awe in visiting dignitaries. Admiral Sarah Chen felt none of it. Her polished boots clicked against the marble floor as she approached her designated seat, the sound echoing through the cavernous space. The Earth delegation section seemed deliberately positioned in the chamber's shadows, while the Krivax representatives basked in the artificial sunlight streaming through the transparent ceiling. Ambassador Lyrics of the Krivax Empire stood at the central podium, his crystalline form refracting rainbow patterns across the gathered assembly. Chen watched the light show with carefully concealed disdain. The Krivax always did love their displays of superiority, even in the middle of what was supposed to be a peace summit. We bring to the Council's attention another unfortunate incident along the Perseus-Arm border. Lyrix's translated voice rang out, each word dripping with false concern. Human colonial vessels once again strayed into Krivax space, necessitating defensive action from our patrol ships. The holographic display activated above the chamber center, showing footage of Earth colony ships fleeing from sleek Krivax cruisers. Chen's hands tightened imperceptibly on her armrests as she watched escape pods jettison from a burning transport. The ship's name was clearly visible, Hope's Harbor. She recognized it immediately, a civilian vessel carrying 300 families to a newly established farming world. We deeply regret any loss of life, Lyrics continued, his crystalline features impossible to read. However, we must insist that the human delegation better control their expansion efforts. These repeated incursions cannot be tolerated. A murmur rippled through the assembled alien representatives. Shen noticed several nodding in agreement. The Krivax had spent decades cultivating their image as the galaxy's civilized peacekeepers, while painting humanity as dangerous upstarts who needed to be contained. The Council recognizes Admiral Chen of Earth, the moderator announced, their tentacles waving in a formal pattern. Chen rose slowly, her dark uniform a stark contrast to the chamber's ethereal architecture. She was shorter than most of the alien delegates, but decades of command had taught her how to fill a room with her presence. The vessel in this footage, she began, her voice steady, was 70 light-years inside recognized Earth space. We have filed 37 formal complaints about Krivax incursions in the past solar month alone. Each was dismissed as a navigational error. She paused, letting her words sink in. Those straying vessels were families, farmers, children. If humans cannot properly navigate space, perhaps they should remain closer to their homeworld. Lyrics interjected smoothly. For safety, of course. We would be happy to establish a protective zone around Earth's core systems. Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. The chamber's temperature seemed to drop several degrees as she stepped away from her seat, approaching the central floor with measured steps. "Let me be clear, Ambassador," she said, her quiet voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "Those ships were exactly where they were supposed to be, just as your raiders were exactly where they intended to be. You've tested our patience, probed our defenses, and murdered our civilians while hiding behind diplomatic niceties." Lyrics's crystalline form glittered as he drew himself up. "Admiral, these baseless accusations are documented," Chen cut him off. "Every raid, every accident, every dismissal of our protests. You believe humans are primitives to be contained, that we lack the sophistication to stand among the stellar powers." Her smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. "You want war. We'll show you war." The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. The moderator's tentacles writhed in distress. Lyrics laughed, the sound like tinkling crystal. "My dear Admiral, surely you cannot be serious. Your species barely understands quantum mechanics. Your ships still use chemical propulsion. A war would be, regrettably, brief." Chen turned away from the podium, her voice carrying over her shoulder. "We'll see." She strode toward the chamber's exit, her team falling in behind her. Just before the doors closed, she heard Lyrics addressing the Council, already spinning the incident to Earth's disadvantage. In the private diplomatic shuttle, Chen's aide looked nervous. "Admiral, was that wise?" Chen's smile remained, but now it reached her eyes. "Send the signal. Operation Starfall is approved." She looked out at the glittering spires of the Confederation capital. "They think we've been showing them everything we can do. Time to educate them about humanity's capacity for surprise." The Kryvax merchant vessel, Crystal Serenity, emerged from hyperspace at its scheduled coordinates, its captain already dreaming of the profits from their latest trade run. The ship's crystalline hull sparkled against the backdrop of stars, its advanced shields humming with enough power to repel any known energy weapon. Captain Zhang of the Earth Special Operations vessel, Shadow Step, watched through specialized filters as the merchant ship followed its predictable course. His ship, running dark and cold, was invisible to the Kryvax's sophisticated sensors. They never bothered looking for something so primitive as a ship operating on minimal power. "Target confirmed," his tactical officer whispered, though sound couldn't travel through space. Old habits died hard. "Kinetic package armed and ready." Zhang allowed himself a small smile. The Kryvax had spent centuries perfecting their energy shields against plasma weapons, particle beams, and quantum disruptors. They'd never considered defending against something as simple as a tungsten rod, accelerated to relativistic speeds. "Release package," he ordered. The package, little more than a shake piece of metal with minimal guidance thrusters, detached from Shadow Step's hull. Physics did the rest. The rod struck the Crystal Serenity's shields at a precisely calculated angle. The advanced energy barrier, designed to dissipate energy attacks, had no defense against pure kinetic force. The shield shattered like its namesake, and the rod continued through the ship's engine section. "Target disabled," Tactical reported. "No crew casualties." The precision strike had been carefully planned to cripple without killing. Earth wasn't fighting a war of extinction. Across the sector, 15 other merchant vessels experienced similar fates within the same hour. None destroyed, all disabled. The message was clear. Earth could strike anywhere, anytime, and the Kryvax's vaunted technology couldn't stop them. In her command center on Luna Base, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display as green lights confirmed successful operations across the board. The Kryvax would expect retaliation against their military assets. Instead, she'd struck at their economy, their pride, their sense of invulnerability. "Second phase authorized," she transmitted to the waiting fleet. "Commence Operation Starfall proper." Deep in the shadows of gas giants and asteroid fields, Earth's actual strike forces powered up. Ships that had been running silent for weeks revealed themselves, but not in the way the Kryvax would expect. Each vessel had been modified with hybrid technology, a combination of primitive human engineering and reversed engineered alien systems. The Kryvax border fleet, rushing to protect their trade routes, never saw the real attack coming. Earth ships seemed to appear from nowhere, their hulls coated with materials that absorbed sensor scans. Their weapons were an impossible mix of kinetic and energy-based systems that confused defensive computers. "Status report," Chen demanded as the first engagements began. "Kryvax fleet formations are breaking," her tactical officer reported with carefully controlled excitement. "Their command and control can't adapt to our hybrid approach. They're trying to coordinate a response, but each of our ship captains is operating independently, following mission protocols rather than rigid tactical doctrine." Chen nodded. The Kryvax, for all their technological superiority, were inflexible. They expected enemies to fight according to established patterns. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, it was their unpredictability. "Send the next signal," she ordered. "Let's show them what else they've overlooked." Across Kryvax space, seemingly abandoned human cargo containers began broadcasting on all frequencies. The crystalline beings had dismissed them as space debris, their sensors showing no power signatures or active systems. Now they activated, releasing clouds of microscopic particles, another primitive solution that their advanced sensors struggled to track. The particles settled on Kryvax ships' crystalline hulls, refracting their own sensor beams back at them, creating ghost images and false readings. Their perfect tactical displays dissolved into chaos. In the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Lyrics received the reports with growing horror. The humans weren't supposed to be capable of this level of coordination, this type of strategic thinking. His crystalline form vibrated with agitation as he realized something that should have been obvious. They'd been studying the Kryvax for years, learning their weaknesses, while showing only what they wanted their enemies to see. The war had begun, and it wasn't following any of the simulations. Commander Sarah Rodriguez watched her engineering team tear apart the cargo bay of the Swift Justice with practiced efficiency. What had been a storage compartment 6 hours ago was transforming into an improvised missile launcher before her eyes. The Kryvax fleet pursuing them had no idea they were charging straight into a trap. "Ma'am," her chief engineer called out, wiping grease from his hands. "Modifications are at 80%. We've repurposed the magnetic loading rails as launch tubes. Not pretty, but it'll work." Rodriguez nodded, remembering the old Earth saying, "If it looks stupid but works, it isn't stupid." The Kryvax would never understand this kind of adaptation. Their ships were perfect crystalline sculptures, each system precisely designed for its purpose. The idea of rebuilding mid-battle would seem like madness to them. "Multiple contacts," her sensor officer announced. "Kryvax battle group emerging from hyperspace. 7 capital ships. Formation Alpha 6. Right on schedule." Rodriguez smiled. "All ships, execute protocol changeling." Across her task force, human vessels began their transformation. Cargo ships revealed hidden weapon ports. Mining vessels redirected their industrial cutting beams to military frequencies. Even the medical ships played their part, their advanced scanners reprogrammed to map enemy shield frequencies. The Kryvax fleet approached in their standard diamond formation, energy weapons charging. Their tactical computers predicted a 98% chance of victory against such a ragtag human fleet. Those same computers failed to account for human ingenuity. "Launch swarm drones," Rodriguez ordered. The newly constructed missile tubes in her cargo bay hummed to life. Hundreds of small, crude-looking devices spewed forth, appearing to the Kryvax sensors as nothing more than debris. The crystalline ships adjusted their shields to deflect such minor annoyances. That was their first mistake. The debris suddenly activated, revealing themselves as miniature electronic warfare platforms. Each drone began broadcasting conflicting sensor data, creating a chaotic electromagnetic environment that played havoc with the Kryvax's precision targeting systems. "Fleet Command," a Kryvax captain transmitted, his translated voice thick with frustration. "Human vessels are not conforming to expected tactical patterns. Request updated combat protocols." "All ships, transition to Phase 2, Rodriguez commanded. Her fleet broke formation, each vessel moving according to its captain's initiative rather than any central plan. The Kryvax, trained to fight against coordinated enemy movements, found their targeting computers overwhelmed by the unpredictable chaos. A mining vessel cut through a crystalline cruiser's engines with its modified industrial beam. The converted cargo hauler launched a spread of magnetically accelerated projectiles that shattered sensor arrays. Even the medical ships contributed, their reprogrammed scanners identifying shield weaknesses for other vessels to exploit. "They're trying to reform their battle line," Tactical reported. Standard Kryvax response to disorder. "Create distance and reestablish formation." Rodriguez keyed her fleet-wide channel. "All ships, execute your contingency modifications. Show them what else we can do." The human fleet transformed again. Ships that had been configured for close assault suddenly sprouted long-range weapons. Vessels the Kryvax had identified as support craft revealed themselves as heavy combat platforms. Every time the crystalline fleet adapted to one configuration, the humans changed their entire battle strategy. In his flagship's command center, the Kryvax fleet commander watched in growing horror as his perfect formation crumbled. His ships, each a masterpiece of engineering, were being outmaneuvered by vessels that seemed to ignore every rule of proper space combat. The humans weren't fighting according to any recognizable doctrine. Each ship was like a different instrument, playing its own tune yet somehow creating a devastating symphony of chaos. Primary target is adjusting shield harmonics, Rodriguez's tactical officer reported. They're trying to create a frequency we can't penetrate. Perfect, Rodriguez replied. Transmit the signal. Let's show them why adaptation beats perfection. As the Krivax flagship strengthened its shields against energy weapons, dozens of human ships suddenly launched physical grappling lines, a technology so ancient the crystalline beings had never bothered defending against it. The lines secured themselves to the flagship's hull, and the human vessels began moving in concert, their combined thrust slowly but inexorably turning the massive ship into the line of fire of its own fleet. The symphony of chaos had reached its crescendo, and the Krivax were learning that sometimes the most primitive solutions were the most effective. The Krivax precision strike hit Earth's central command with perfect accuracy. Their crystalline warships had slipped through a gap in the defense grid, their advanced stealth systems finally proving their worth. The massive complex, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, vanished in a flash of quantum fire. High Commander Zenith's crystalline form vibrated with satisfaction as the confirmation reached his flagship. The humans' command structure is severed. Their fleet will be paralyzed without central coordination. Begin the final phase of our assault. His tactical officer's response was cut short by urgent signals from their forward units. Human vessels weren't drifting aimlessly as predicted. Instead, they were accelerating, breaking into smaller task forces, each pursuing different objectives with deadly efficiency. In the command center of the destroyer Resilient, Captain Marcus Chen studied the tactical display showing the destruction of Central Command. His expression remained calm as he activated the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. You know your duties. You know our mission. Execute. The ancient military doctrine of commander's intent, a concept dating back to Earth's earliest armies, proved its worth in the void of space. Every ship captain had been trained not just to follow orders, but to understand the deeper strategic objectives of the war effort. Multiple Krivax battle groups converging on our position, his tactical officer reported. They're trying to isolate us from the rest of the fleet. Chen nodded. They expect us to attempt to regroup, to seek new orders from a central authority. Let's show them how humans actually fight. Signal the Wolfpack squadrons. Hunt's Law is in effect. Across the sector, other human captains were making similar decisions. The destruction of Central Command hadn't crippled Earth's military. It had unleashed it. Each commander now had the freedom to pursue their objectives as they saw fit, bound together not by rigid protocols but by shared understanding of the mission. The Krivax fleet, designed around perfect coordination and centralized control, found themselves facing dozens of smaller task forces, each operating independently yet somehow maintaining strategic coherence. Every time they adjusted their tactics to counter one group, the others would shift their approach, creating a constantly evolving battlefield that defied prediction. Impossible, High Commander Zenith declared as reports of human successes flooded in. Their command structure is destroyed. How are they maintaining tactical coordination? His answer came in the form of a massive breach in his fleet's formation. A group of human destroyers had slipped through, using the Krivax's own predictable response patterns against them. The crystalline ships, waiting for orders to adjust their position, watched helplessly as the humans exploited gaps that their own rigid doctrine had created. On the bridge of the Resilient, Chen watched his tactical display light up with successful strikes across the sector. Status of operation memory. All ships report mission parameters understood and in progress. Sir, his communications officer replied. Task Force Gamma has already achieved their secondary objectives and is moving to exploit new opportunities. Chen allowed himself a small smile. The Krivax had studied human military history, but they'd learned the wrong lessons. They'd focused on technology, on weapon systems, on fleet compositions. They'd missed the most important element, the human ability to think independently while working toward a common goal. "Sir," Tactical reported, "Kryvak's flagship is attempting to consolidate their forces. They're transmitting new command protocols to all their ships." "Exactly as expected," Chen replied. "Signal all nearby task forces. Execute contingency plan Delta 7. The human ships broke formation again, but this time they didn't retreat. Instead, they accelerated directly toward the gaps between Kryvak's vessels. The crystalline ships, their commanders waiting for updated orders to deal with this new situation, held their positions too long. By the time High Commander Zenith authorized his fleet to act independently, it was too late. The human vessels had turned his perfect formation into a chaotic brawl, the kind of close-quarters combat that negated the Kryvak's technological advantages. "Send word to the High Command," Zenith ordered, his crystalline form clouded with concern. "The humans, they aren't just fighting without central coordination. They're fighting better without it." The ancient wisdom of Earth's military traditions, born in the mud and blood of countless battlefields, had proven its worth among the stars. The Kryvak's were learning that sometimes the old ways were best, and that underestimating humanity's apparent primitive nature could be a fatal mistake. Lieutenant Maya Patel pressed herself against the crystalline wall, her adaptive camouflage suit bending light around her form. The Kryvak security patrol passed within inches, their translucent bodies refracting the ambient light of their city spire. They never thought to look for something hiding in plain sight. The concept of camouflage was alien to beings who had evolved as living crystals. "Shadow Team, status check," Shisa vocalized, the quantum encrypted signal barely registering on even the most sensitive Kryvak's instruments. "Shadow 2, in position at the power distribution hub. Shadow 3, maintaining overwatch from level 50. Shadow 4, security systems mapped and ready." The infiltration of the Kryvak's capital world had been deemed impossible by their defensive analysts. Their cities were transparent, their sensors could detect the slightest energy signature, and their security systems were supposedly impenetrable. But they had never faced human special forces trained in the art of hiding in plain sight. "Execute Phase 1, Patel ordered. "Remember, minimal force. We're here to demonstrate capability, not cause casualties." Throughout the crystalline spire, her team began their carefully choreographed mission. Shadow 2 planted devices that looked like simple mechanical timers on key power nodes. The Kryvak's, expecting sophisticated electronic attacks, had no protocols for dealing with clockwork mechanisms. Shadow 3, positioned high above, used a primitive mirror array to redirect security sensors. The Kryvak's, masters of energy manipulation, had never considered that their own transparent architecture could be used against them through simple light reflection. "Primary target located," Shadow 4 reported. "Security hub is operating on standard protocols. They're scanning for energy weapons, plasma signatures, and quantum disruption fields." Patel smiled beneath her mask. "But not for piano wire and glass cutters. Proceed with Phase 2. The infiltration team moved like ghosts through the crystalline corridors. Their equipment had been specifically chosen to exploit the Kryvak's technological blind spots. Instead of energy weapons, they carried composite blades that registered as mineral deposits. Rather than electronic jammers, they used mechanical devices that appeared as background noise to advanced sensors. "Security alert in Section 7. A Kryvak's announcement echoed through the spire. "All units activate maximum sensor sensitivity." "Right on schedule," Patel murmured. The alert was responding to a deliberate diversion, a small energy signature planted to draw attention away from their true objective. The team converged on the central security hub, their movements synchronized with the building's patrol patterns. Shadow 4 produced a simple glass-cutting tool, technology so ancient the Kryvak's had never bothered defending against it. The circular piece of crystal fell inward silently, caught by gloved hands. "Control room secured," Shadow 2 reported minutes later. "You should see their faces, Lieutenant. They never even knew we were here until we were standing right next to them. Patel entered the control center, finally deactivating her camouflage. The Kryvax security officers stared in shock at the humans who had seemingly materialized from thin air. Their crystalline forms vibrated with confusion and fear. "Your city's defense systems have been compromised," she announced calmly. "We could have disabled them. Instead, we chose to deliver a message." She handed a simple paper note, another technology the Kryvax had dismissed as primitive, to the chief security officer. The message was brief. "Your transparency is your weakness. Your technology is your blind spot. Consider carefully what other human capabilities you might be overlooking." The team vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving behind a room full of bewildered Kryvax security officers and a growing sense of dread among their military command. How could they defend against an enemy who turned their greatest strengths into weaknesses, who used technology so primitive it bypassed their most advanced security systems? As her team exited the city via their pre-planned routes, Patel sent one final encrypted message to Earth Command. "Operation Looking Glass complete. The Kryvax now understand that no place is safe, no defense perfect, no technology superior when facing human ingenuity." In the following days, reports would emerge from across Kryvax space of similar infiltrations. Each demonstration proved the same point. Humanity's primitive methods had achieved what their advanced technology claimed was impossible. The crystal cities of the Kryvax had become their greatest vulnerability, and their confidence in their technological superiority had been shattered as effectively as their transparent walls. Dr. Marcus Lee stood in the center of Earth's advanced warfare laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays of captured Kryvax technology. His team of scientists and engineers worked with fevered intensity, their minds racing ahead of conventional wisdom. The crystalline remnants of a Kryvax shield generator pulsed with pale light as they probed its secrets. Traditional reverse engineering would take years, he explained to Admiral Chen, who had arrived for an emergency briefing. "So we stopped thinking like traditional engineers. Instead, we're combining their technology with human intuition." A younger scientist rushed up, her eyes bright with excitement. "Dr. Lee, the hybrid prototype is ready for demonstration." The main laboratory screen activated, showing a test chamber where a small device sat, a bizarre fusion of crystalline technology and human engineering. It looked wrong, almost painful to the eye, as if two completely different technological philosophies had been forced to cooperate. "The Kryvax build everything in perfect crystalline patterns," Lee explained, adjusting the device's settings. "They see it as the only logical approach, but we ask ourselves, what if we deliberately introduced chaos into the equation?" The device hummed to life, its human components seeming to clash with its crystalline elements. Yet somehow, the very discord between the two technologies created something new. A shield bubble formed, but unlike the rigid geometric patterns of Kryvax shields, this one flowed and shifted like liquid metal. "Their shields are perfect at deflecting known energy patterns," Lee continued. "Ours adapt and learn. We're not trying to match their perfection. We're embracing imperfection as a strength." Admiral Chen watched as weapons fire struck the experimental shield. Instead of attempting to deflect or absorb the energy in a calculated pattern, the shield rippled and transformed, each hit teaching it new ways to respond. "How soon can we implement this?" she asked, already seeing the tactical possibilities. "That's the beauty of human innovation, Admiral," Lee replied with a fierce grin. "We're not waiting for perfection. The first prototypes are already being installed on our forward fleet. We'll improve them in real time, learning from each engagement." Across the laboratory, similar scenes played out. Engineers combined Kryvax power crystals with human hydraulic systems, creating hybrid engines that drew power from the very chaos of their design. Weapons specialists fused crystalline focusing arrays with conventional ballistic technology, developing guns that could switch between energy and kinetic projectiles mid-battle. The Kryvax see technology as a path to perfection, Lee said, leading the Admiral through the busy facility. We see it as a tool for adaptation. Every piece of their technology we capture becomes part of our evolution. A massive screen displayed real-time battle data from the front lines. Human ships, already incorporating the first wave of hybrid technology, engaged Kryvax vessels with increasing success. The crystalline ships, for all their technological superiority, couldn't adapt to weapons and defenses that seemed to break the laws of their understanding. "Sir," a technician called out, "the Kryvax have deployed their new planetary shield over their core worlds." Lee's expression turned predatory. "Right on schedule. Deploy Project Shatterpoint." The laboratory erupted in coordinated activity. What the Kryvax didn't know was that Earth scientists had anticipated this development. Even as the crystalline beings raised their perfect defenses, human ships were being equipped with weapons specifically designed to exploit the fundamental principles of their technology. Their greatest weakness, Lee explained to Chen, is their inability to conceive of imperfect solutions. They'll maintain their planetary shields at precise frequencies, never thinking to randomize them, never imagining that we'd create weapons that use their own perfection against them. The Admiral watched as the first reports came in from the front. Human ships, armed with technology that had existed only in theory days before, were already pressing their advantage. The Kryvax perfect defenses were crumbling before weapons they couldn't understand, couldn't predict, couldn't counter. Evolution at light speed, Chen mused, watching the tactical displays. They thought their technology was the pinnacle of achievement. They never considered that adaptation might be more powerful than perfection. Lee nodded, already turning to the next innovation. They gave us access to their technology, thinking we were too primitive to understand it. Instead, we're teaching them that understanding something and thinking beyond it are two very different things. In the depths of space, human ships armed with impossible hybrid weapons continued to advance. The perfect crystalline formations of the Kryvax fleet faced an enemy that evolved faster than they could adapt, wielding technology that defied their fundamental understanding of how the universe should work. Captain Sarah Liu sat before a curved bank of holographic displays, her fingers dancing across virtual interfaces as lines of code flowed like water. Around her, the Cyber Command Center hummed with controlled intensity, as Earth's best digital warriors prepared to launch humanity's most audacious attack yet. The Kryvax network architecture is based entirely on crystalline quantum processors, she explained to the assembled team leaders. Their systems are perfect, ordered, predictable, and that's exactly why they're vulnerable. The main display showed a three-dimensional representation of the Kryvax defense grid. Each node was a masterpiece of engineering, processing data through crystalline matrices with incredible speed and precision. But the humans had discovered something the Kryvax had never considered. The very perfection of their systems made them brittle. Team 1. Initiate Protocol Chaos, Liu commanded. Let's show them why sometimes the best code is messy code. The first wave of the attack began subtly. Human programmers, their methods deemed primitive by Kryvax standards, began introducing small irregularities into the enemy's network. Nothing that would trigger their security systems, just tiny imperfections in their perfectly ordered data streams. They're responding exactly as predicted, her second-in-command reported. Their systems are automatically trying to correct the irregularities, forcing them to dedicate more processing power to maintenance. Liu nodded. The Kryvax, with their rigid thinking, could never understand the beauty of imperfection. Their systems were designed to maintain absolute precision, which made them predictable, breakable. Team 2, deploy the quantum paradox programs, she ordered. Team 3, stand by with the legacy protocols. The second phase of the attack hit the Kryvax networks like a digital tsunami. Programs written with deliberately contradictory logic confused their quantum processors. The crystalline systems, unable to handle statements that were simultaneously true and false, began to falter. Their primary defense grid is showing signs of strain, a junior analyst called out. They're trying to isolate the affected sectors, but the corruption is spreading faster than they can contain it. Liu allowed herself a small smile. The Kryvax had built their entire digital infrastructure around quantum computing, never imagining that anyone would deliberately use inferior classical computing methods against them. But humanity had kept their old systems, understanding that sometimes the simplest solution was the most effective. Team 3. Execute Operation Legacy. Show them why we never completely abandoned the old ways. Across the Kryvax defense network, ancient computer protocols, some dating back to Earth's earliest digital age, began to appear. Simple binary code, running on basic logic gates, slipped through gaps in their quantum defenses. The crystalline processors, designed to handle complex quantum calculations, were overwhelmed by the sheer primitive efficiency of human programming. "Ma'am," her second-in-command reported, excitement breaking through his professional demeanor. "Their entire network is destabilizing. The quantum processors can't handle the conflicting computational paradigms." The main display showed the Kryvax defense grid falling into chaos. Their perfect systems, confronted with human digital warfare techniques they had dismissed as obsolete, were failing spectacularly. Emergency backups activated, only to face the same fundamental problem. They couldn't adapt to methods they had never considered worth defending against. "Send the final package," Liu ordered. "Let's give them a choice." The last phase of the attack wasn't designed to destroy. Instead, it presented a simple message across every Kryvax command and control system. "Your perfection is your weakness. Surrender now, and we'll teach you the strength of imperfection." In the crystalline spires of the Kryvax High Command, their leaders watched in horror as their impenetrable defense grid crumbled before attacks they couldn't even understand. Their perfect society, built on principles of absolute order and predictability, faced an enemy that turned chaos itself into a weapon. "Status report." Admiral Chen's voice came through Liu's secure channel. "Operation Digital Tempest successful, Admiral." Liu replied, watching the Kryvax networks collapse. Their entire command and control structure is compromised. They're facing a choice: adapt or fall. The Kryvax, masters of crystalline technology and quantum computing, had finally met their match, not in superior technology, but in humanity's ability to think beyond conventional boundaries. Their perfect digital fortress had fallen to an enemy that understood sometimes the best way forward was to step backward, to embrace the chaos of simpler solutions. Admiral Sarah Chen stood once again in the Grand Council chamber, but everything had changed. The crystalline spires no longer seemed to tower with intimidating grandeur. Instead, their transparency revealed the fundamental weakness that had led to the Kryvax's downfall: their inability to see beyond their own perfection. The Kryvax High Command stood before the assembly, their once brilliant forms now dulled with the weight of defeat. High Commander Zenith stepped forward, his crystalline structure vibrating with carefully controlled emotion. "The Kryvax Empire," he began, his translated voice carrying across the chamber, "has existed for 10,000 years. We achieved perfection in technology, in society, in warfare. We thought we had reached the pinnacle of evolution." He paused, his form refracting light in complex patterns. "We were wrong." Chen watched as the commander's words sent ripples through the assembled delegates. Species that had long lived in the shadow of Kryvax superiority were witnessing something unprecedented: the admission of imperfection from those who had claimed to be perfect. "In 8 standard months," Zenith continued, "humanity has taught us more about warfare, adaptation, and the true nature of strength than we had learned in millennia. They defeated our fleets not with superior technology, but with unpredictability. They breached our defenses not with brute force, but with ingenuity. They shattered our networks not with advanced quantum computing, but with elegant simplicity." The chamber's holographic displays activated, showing footage from the war. Human ships transforming mid-battle, their crews adapting faster than Kryvax tactical computers could process. Special forces teams appearing like ghosts in supposedly impenetrable crystalline cities. ancient computer code bringing down the most advanced defense grid in known space. Therefore, Zenith announced, the Kryvax Empire formally surrenders to the Earth Alliance, but we do not do so in shame. We do so in recognition that we have found not an enemy to be feared, but a teacher to be valued. Chen stepped forward, her uniform gleaming under the chamber's lights. The Earth Alliance accepts your surrender, she declared, then smiled. And your invitation to learn from each other. You offered us war, and we showed you war. Now let us show you something far more powerful, the art of evolution. From her pocket, she withdrew a small crystal, its structure deliberately imperfect. Within its matrix, human and Kryvax technology worked together in ways that defied conventional physics. It was ugly by Kryvax standards, beautiful in its functionality. This represents our future, she continued. Not perfect crystalline structures or chaotic human adaptations, but a fusion of both. The strength of order combined with the power of imperfection. Together, we can achieve things neither of us could manage alone. The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates realized the implications. The Kryvax, masters of crystalline technology, working alongside humans, masters of adaptation. The potential was staggering. Your methods were incomprehensible to us, Zenith admitted, examining the hybrid crystal. Each time we thought we understood your capabilities, you showed us something new. How did you achieve such rapid evolution? Chen's smile widened. By embracing what you considered our greatest weaknesses, our chaos, our imperfection, our willingness to try solutions that seemed primitive or illogical. In seeking perfection, you became predictable. In embracing imperfection, we became unstoppable. As the surrender ceremony concluded, Shen found herself standing with Zenith in one of the chamber's observation galleries. The stars stretched out before them, witness to a moment that would reshape galactic society. We thought we were containing a primitive species, Zenith mused. Instead, we were imprisoning ourselves within our own assumptions. The greatest prison is the belief that you've achieved perfection, Chen replied. The greatest freedom is knowing you can always evolve. She turned to face the crystalline commander. Ready for your first lesson in embracing chaos. The light passing through Zenith's form seemed to dance with new possibility. We offered you war, he said, echoing her earlier words, and you showed us war. But you also showed us something far more valuable. You showed us how to change. Above them, Earth and Kryvax ships patrolled together, their different designs complementing each other in ways that would have seemed impossible months ago. The war was over, but the real revolution was just beginning. The revolution of imperfection against stagnation, of evolution against perfection, of the beautiful chaos of possibility.